I'm Miss B, and today we're reading What If You Could Sniff Like a Shark by Sandra Markle, illustrated by Howard McWilliam. What if one day when you woke up, you found out that overnight you gained an ocean animal superpower? What if you could shapeshift like a giant Pacific octopus? Or sting like an Australian box jellyfish? Or have some other ocean animal's cool natural ability? How in the world would an ocean animal superpower change your life? Great white shark. What if you could sniff like a great white shark? A great white shark doesn't sniff the way you do. It swims with its snout straight ahead, forcing water into its nostrils and through short tubes. Before the water flows out again, it passes folds of skin packed with scent-sensing cells. These send messages to the shark's brain. That's how the shark smells what's in the water. Wounded animals are easier to hunt, so a great white is always sniffing for blood. It can smell even a tiny amount up to 3 miles away. Where in the world? Great white sharks are most common in oceans where the water is between 54 degrees Fahrenheit and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. If you could sniff like a great white shark, you wouldn't need directions to find a donut shop. What you should know. Adult size. When great white sharks are adults, they are as long as 21 feet and weigh up to 2,400 pounds. They have a lifespan of around 70 years, and they eat mainly fish, seals, and dolphins. Growing up, a baby great white shark is called a pup. It develops inside an egg in its mother's body. At first, the pup gets the food it needs from its egg's yolk. When it leaves its egg, it continues to grow inside its mother for another 12 to 18 months. During this time, it eats undeveloped eggs, even some of its siblings. At birth, it's already 5 feet long, weighs about 75 pounds, and has a mouthful of sharp teeth. Ooh. Wonder why a great white shark's body has a tail dorsal fin? Without it, each strong side-to-side sweep of the shark's caudal fin would roll it over. The dorsal fin keeps a swimming great white's body upright. Supercharged! If you could sniff like a great white shark, you could pinpoint smoke in time to prevent forest fires. Let's take a look at these little facts and statistics. You can see that the very end of the shark is called the caudal fin. That's the big one at the end of its tail. And at the top of its body, that's the dorsal fin. And on the sides, those are its pectoral fins. Those lines in front of its pectoral fins are called gill slits. Water enters through the shark's mouth and then flows through its gills and out the gill slits. That is how it gets the oxygen it needs from the water. At the front of the mouth, we have the teeth. There are about 300 in total. 2 front rows are ready to bite, and the rest replace teeth as they're lost. And that little hole on the front, that's their nose or their nostril. Giant Pacific octopus. What if you could shapeshift like a giant Pacific octopus? A giant Pacific octopus's body is boneless. The only hard parts are its parrot-like beak around its mouth and 2 plate-like shells inside its head where muscles attach. The rest of its big body is like a muscular balloon with flexible arms. So a giant Pacific octopus can fit through anything bigger than its largest hard body part, its beak. It can even squeeze through an opening as small as a soda pop can. Where in the world? The giant Pacific octopus is most commonly found in shallow water. If you could shapeshift like a giant Pacific octopus, you'd never need a gate to slip through a fence. What you should know. As an adult, the main body, called the mantle, is about 24 inches long, but it can be as big as 30 feet across between fully spread arms. It weighs up to 600 pounds, and it lives for about 4 years. It eats mainly clams, abalone, scallops, and fish. Growing up, a giant Pacific octopus baby is called a hatchling. It develops inside an egg as tiny as a grain of rice. Its mother lays about 100,000 eggs and sticks them along the walls of her den. She guards her eggs until the young hatch about 7 months later. Only about as big as a garden pea, each hatchling swims to the surface. It floats there for about 3 months, eating what it can catch and growing bigger. Then it sinks back to the ocean floor to continue feeding and growing. Wonder why? A giant Pacific octopus has a large siphon? It's because that siphon is the body part that the octopus uses to jet away from danger. The rest of the time, the siphon is simply part of the octopus's breathing process. Water enters through an opening in the mantle and passes its gills, which extract oxygen. Then the water flows out through the siphon, except when the octopus needs to move fast. Then its muscular mantle squeezes and squirts water out the siphon. At the same time, the octopus can release ink into the squirting water. That creates a dark cloud that hides the octopus while it makes its getaway. Supercharged! If you could shapeshift like a giant Pacific octopus, you could easily squeeze onto a crowded sofa. Let's take a look at the parts of the octopus. We have the eye, that's the little hole by its head. The mantle, remember that's the long part. The siphon, the part that blows the water out. And its arms. Each of the 8 arms is covered with over 200 suckers to grab and hold prey. Australian box jellyfish. What if you could sting like an Australian box jellyfish? An Australian box jellyfish has as many as 60 tentacles, stringy flexible parts, hanging from its box-shaped body. These tentacles can stretch out as far as 10 feet. Each one is covered with around 5,000 stinging cells. If the tentacles are touched or even just brushed against, these stinging cells uncoil. Zap! Wherever one makes contact, it stabs, injecting venom that's deadlier than a cobra's. Even a tiny amount causes extreme pain. Where in the world? Australian box jellyfish are mainly found in warm surface waters close to coasts. If you could sting like an Australian box jellyfish, you'd be a crime-fighting superhero. What you should know. As an adult, its body is up to 10 inches across and weighs up to 4 pounds. It lives for about 1 year, and it eats mainly fish, shrimp, krill, and arrowworms. Growing up. A baby Australian box jellyfish has different names at different stages while it's growing up. Females release their eggs into the ocean. When an egg hatches, the baby is called a larva. Soon, the larva settles to the sea floor and attaches to coral or a rock. Then the larva changes shape to look just like a tiny sea anemone. During this stage, it's called a polyp, and it feeds on plankton, tiny living things in the water. After a few months, the polyp goes through a special type of reproduction called budding. This produces lots of adult jellyfish. These separate from the polyp and swim away. Wonder why an Australian box jellyfish has so many eyes? The jellyfish doesn't see the way people do, but it has lots of eyes, clusters of 6 along the lower edge of each side of its boxy body. These eyes are simply to sense light from dark. They let the jellyfish see all the way around itself, so it can avoid floating debris or big predators such as sunfish. It can also spy when small prey come close enough to sting and eat. Supercharged! If you could sting like an Australian box jellyfish, you'd be a quarterback who never gets sacked. Let's take a look at the parts of the jellyfish. So you can see the first yellow line at the front is pointing to the mouth. It's kind of hard to see, but that's what it says it is. And that little circle dot next to the mouth is its eye. And at the top, we have the bell. This jellyfish has a box-shaped elastic body. And the last part are the tentacles. Coconut crab. What if you could snap like a coconut crab? The snapping force of an adult coconut crab's massive claws is the same as a lion's bite. Scientists discovered this using special equipment that compares size to strength. With such force, it's no wonder the coconut crab is able to feast on hard foods like coconuts. This crab also snaps its powerful claws to warn other crabs to stay away and to defend itself against predators. Where in the world? Coconut crabs are found on islands in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Christmas Island hosts the world's largest population. If you could snap like a coconut crab, you'd easily make yourself the coolest Halloween costume ever. What you should know. As an adult, it's up to 16 inches long and weighs up to 10 pounds because they are the world's biggest crustaceans. Crustaceans are like cousins of lobsters and shrimp. It lives for as long as 50 years, and it mainly eats fruits and nuts, including coconuts. Growing up, a baby coconut crab is called a larva. It develops inside a tiny egg stuck to its mother's abdomen. After several months, its mother walks into the ocean in time for her babies to hatch. Each crab larva floats away and feeds on plankton as it continues to develop. After about a month, it becomes a juvenile. Then it has a hard body cover called a carapace, covering the front of its body but not its abdomen. So it finds a shell on the seafloor and pushes its abdomen inside. As the juvenile eats and grows bigger, it keeps switching shells for one that's larger. Finally, the coconut crab develops its own hard abdominal covering. It's now an adult coconut crab and moves ashore to live on land. Wonder why? Once a year, a coconut crab hides for 6 to 8 weeks? Hiding is how the crab protects itself while it's shedding its carapace to grow bigger. A new carapace is already under the old one, but it is soft at first. That lets this covering stretch to fit the crab's bigger body. The crab hides out until its new coat becomes armor hard. Supercharged! If you could snap like a coconut crab, you'd easily lead expeditions through extra thick jungles. Let's take a look at the parts of the crab. At the top, that hard shell is called the carapace, like we read about. Then we have its legs, which we call the walking legs. In the front, you can see its eye, which is behind its antennas. And the left claw is always larger than the right. Starry pufferfish. What if you could puff up like a starry pufferfish? A starry pufferfish can easily expand to 2 or 3 times its normal size. The pufferfish puffs up by quickly gulping a lot of water into its elastic stomach. Its skin, which is made of wavy folds, also stretches. So when a hungry predator like a tiger shark swims close, the fish puffs into a ball that's hopefully too big to bite. Getting bigger fast makes a good defense. Where in the world? Starry pufferfish are most often found around coral reefs. If you could puff up like a starry pufferfish, you'd be the main attraction in every parade. What you should know. As an adult, it's about 21 inches long and weighs around 9 pounds. It lives for about 8 years and it eats mainly sea urchins, sponges, crabs, and coral. Growing up, a baby pufferfish is called a fry. A female releases 3 to 7 eggs in the warmer water close to shore and swims away. The eggs float for about a week. Then the fry hatch, but they aren't fully developed yet. A fry's body has a hard shell that protects it for the few extra days needed for its fins to grow. Once that happens, the shell cracks and falls off. Wonder why a starry pufferfish's eyes aren't always looking in the same direction? That's because each eye can turn separately. So a starry pufferfish can look in 2 different directions at once to watch for prey and predators. Supercharged! If you could puff up like a starry pufferfish, you'd save your friends a spot in the bleachers without breaking a sweat. Let's take a look at the parts of the pufferfish. Starting at the left side, or the very back of the fish, we have its caudal fin. That's the one at the end. Then, underneath the fish, we have the anal fin. On top of the fish, we have the dorsal fin. And on the side of the fish, we have the pectoral fin. Covering the fish is its skin. And instead of its skin being covered with scales like most fish, it has a poisonous snot-like coating. Then we have its eye and, of course, its mouth. Firefly squid. What if you could light up like a firefly squid? Firefly squids' bodies are covered with special light-producing organs. Each organ produces a chemical called luciferin and a protein called luciferase. The reaction between the chemical and protein when they are combined with oxygen from the water gives off a cool blue light. These lights can be flashed all at once or in patterns to attract a mate. The light also lures prey close enough to the firefly squid to catch with its tentacles. Where in the world? Firefly squid live along coastal shelves in the ocean's twilight zone, where only faint light filters down. If you could light up like a firefly squid, you'd be the spy everyone counts on to send secret messages. What you should know. As an adult, it's about 3 inches long and weighs only about 1/3 of an ounce. It lives for about 1 year and eats mainly small fish. Growing up, a baby firefly squid is called a paralarva. Every year from March through June, thousands of adult firefly squid gather near the ocean surface at mating sites. Each female releases as many as 20,000 eggs in jelly-like strings that can be up to 4 feet long. The eggs hatch in 6 to 14 days. Each firefly squid paralarva looks just like an adult, only much smaller. It spends its days in the dark depths, but it comes to the surface at night to feed on prey and grow bigger. Wonder why a firefly squid's tentacles are longer than its arms? The tentacles are long enough to stretch out into the dark ocean. The light-producing organs at the tentacle tips lure fish prey close. The tentacles also have suckers that are used to snag the prey. Then it pulls the prey close enough to the arms to grab and move to its mouth. Supercharged! If you could light up like a firefly squid, you'd be the school's star crossing guard. Let's take a look at the parts of the squid. At the back, we have the mantle, and up top there's the fin. You can see the huge eye. Then there's the siphon. This is where the water is ejected to make the firefly squid jet away from danger. And on the front, we have its arms. Loggerhead sea turtle. What if you could armor up like a loggerhead sea turtle? A loggerhead sea turtle shell is its body's armor, and it's hard enough to protect it from being chomped by a shark. The turtle's shell is formed by about 60 bones, which are part of its rib cage and backbones. These bones are covered with hard, overlapping plates formed from keratin, the same material that makes up human fingernails. Because the main part of its shell is made of its bones, as the turtle's body grows bigger, so does its armor. Where in the world? Loggerhead sea turtles are found in every ocean except the cold Arctic and Antarctic. If you could armor up like a loggerhead sea turtle, you'd never worry about slipping on an icy sidewalk. What you should know. Loggerhead sea turtles are endangered. As an adult, they're about 3 feet long and weigh as much as 250 pounds. They could live for more than 60 years, and they mainly eat horseshoe crabs, clams, and sea urchins. Growing up, a baby loggerhead sea turtle is called a hatchling. Each baby develops inside a leathery shelled egg. A female produces the eggs and buries them in a nest she digs on a sandy beach. One nest may contain as many as 300 eggs. How warm the egg stays determines the hatchling sex. Warmer eggs produce females, and cooler eggs produce males. The eggs hatch after about 60 days. Then each hatchling crawls to the water and swims away. It's on its own to grow up in the ocean. Wonder why a loggerhead sea turtle has such big flippers? The turtle uses its flat, broad, wing-like front flippers to propel itself through the water. The back flippers act as rudders for steering. Females also use their back flippers to dig a nest hole in the sand for their eggs. Supercharged! If you could armor up like a loggerhead sea turtle, you'd be the best movie stunt person in Hollywood. Let's take a look at the body parts on the sea turtle. Let's start at the very front with its beak. Behind its beak, it has its eye and its head. Unlike some kind of turtles, it can't pull its head into its shell to stay safe. On the top, we have its upper shell, and on the bottom, we have its bottom shell. On the front, we have its front flippers, and on the back, we have its back flippers. Female deep-sea anglerfish. What if you could enchant like a female deep-sea anglerfish? Only the female deep-sea anglerfish has a lure to enchant prey. It's formed by a stiff, supporting ray in the fin on the top of her back. There are tiny glowing bacteria living in a bulb-shaped part of the tip of the lure. That glowing part stretches out just far enough to dangle in front of the fish's big mouth. In the ocean's dark depths, the female anglerfish only has to stay still to hide. Then she wiggles her light-tipped lure. Any little fish enchanted enough to come check it out is dinner. Gulp! Where in the world? Deep-sea anglerfish float along in the ocean's depths. Scientists are continuing to investigate its range. If you could enchant like a female deep-sea anglerfish, you would be a world-famous hypnotist. What you should know. As an adult, it's up to 30 inches long and weighs as much as 110 pounds. It lives for around 30 years, and it eats any fish it can catch. Growing up, a baby deep-sea anglerfish is called a larva. A female releases as many as 1 million tiny eggs at a time. The eggs are within a huge, thin, gelatin-like sheet that floats to the ocean's surface. There, the larvae hatch. As each larva feeds and grows bigger, it lives at deeper and deeper levels, down to the ocean depths. Males attach to females, stay tiny, and are carried along with them. Only the females develop lures. Wonder why a female deep-sea anglerfish has such a big mouth? Prey is hard to come by down deep in the ocean, so an anglerfish needs to be able to take advantage of whatever fish it can attract close enough to catch. That's why an anglerfish needs to have a big mouth it can open really wide, and its stomach can also stretch to hold a big meal. Supercharged! If you could enchant like a female deep-sea anglerfish, you'd be the most spellbinding storyteller on the camping trip. Let's take a look at the body parts of an anglerfish. Starting at the front, we have its mouth. And the big, long, antenna-like piece is called the lure. Then we can see its eye, its skin, and its body that's basketball-shaped and floats easily. Blue flying fish. What if you could glide like a blue flying fish? When a blue flying fish leaps into the air, its wing-like fins move forward and sideways, like a person spreading their arms wide. These fins lock into place with lots of stiff rays for support. Once in the air, its fins let a blue flying fish glide as far as 328 feet in one leap. With any luck, that's far enough to escape a fast, hungry predator, such as a tarpon or a swordfish. Where in the world? Blue flying fish are found around the world in tropical ocean water. If you could glide like a blue flying fish, even catching the school bus could be an adventure. What you should know. As an adult, it's about 8 inches long and weighs 4 ounces. It lives for about 5 years, and it eats mainly zooplankton, which are tiny animals living near the ocean surface. Growing up. A baby blue flying fish is called a larva when it hatches and a fry when it's older. Females release as many as 300 eggs at a time. These eggs have many tiny sticky strings that anchor them to seaweed floating in the water. Each larva hatches in about a week, but it's attached to the yolk sac that was in its egg. It still needs this for food while it develops a little more. By the time the yolk is used up, the larva can feed itself. Then it's a fry. Still little, it hides among other tiny animals floating at the surface while it feeds and continues to grow bigger. Wonder why a blue flying fish's forked tail is much longer on the bottom? During its glide, the fish eventually sinks back toward the water. The longer section of its caudal fin touches the ocean surface first. When it beats fast against the water, this longer section launches the fish up into the air again, so it can glide even farther. Supercharged! If you could glide like a blue flying fish, you'd set an unbreakable world-long jump record. Let's take a look at the body parts on this fish. Its very back tail is called the caudal fin. On the sides, we have the pectoral fins. On the front, behind the eye, there's the gill flap, which covers and protects its gills. And then we have its eye. Home sweet habitat. All living things need a habitat to call home. This special place supplies the oxygen, water, food, shelter, and space needed to live and produce babies. Earth offers a number of very different habitats. One of these is its oceans. Ocean habitats are divided into 2 main areas: coastal, which are close to the shore, and open ocean, which is all the rest. From the top down, the open ocean is also divided into different habitat zones. At the top, we have the sunlight zone. That's down to about 660 feet. Most ocean plants and animals live in this sunlit warm water. Then there's the twilight zone. That's from 660 feet down to 3,300 feet. There is only faint light in this cooler water zone. Fewer animals live here, and there are no plants. Then we have the midnight zone, which is from 3,300 feet down to 13,000 feet. This zone is cold and dark with high water pressure. The only light is from animals that produce their own light. And at the very bottom, we have the abyss zone. This is from 13,000 feet down to the sea's floor. The water here is the coldest and darkest in the ocean, and the water pressure is very high. But some animals still live here, and some others visit. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about some of the ocean's animals. Later, Gators, learn, grow, and let the stories flow. Like and subscribe!